Hi, in this video I'm going to talk about how my client secured leave outside of the rules travelling from Hong Kong to the UK in the first instance, and then leaving the UK and coming back in and applying at the border. So let's look at the process as a case study. Lots of interesting points to be learned. Now, as for the facts, my client entered the UK from Hong Kong in late July on their BNO passport. In mid-September they went to an EU country, but this is just for the day. There was no requirement to quarantine. I think that's an important point. You should check this. You don't want to be in a position where you're quarantined for 14 days. You'd want to look at a country, obviously the position is changing every day, but a country where there isn't necessarily quarantine arrangements for your convenience. Then they stayed there for the afternoon and flew back to the UK in the evening, coming into Heathrow. They produced all of the LOTR documents that I've covered in my other BNO videos, but they were only required to provide the evidence that they could financially support themselves in the UK. That was on this occasion. So you should ensure that you have all the documents as a backup, as my client did, and take legal advice beforehand. And I'm working with an advisor in Hong Kong to assist you if you would like help, support and guidance on settling in the UK through applying for leave outside of the rules. Now, my client came back with family members, so this was an elderly relative and an adult sibling. Each of those had BNO passports in their own right, and they were each granted LOTR. So the relatives did not come as dependents. They had BNO passports in their own right. Now, one point before we get on to the advantages of applying at the border, you should check, of course, that if you're leaving and re-entering to apply at the border, and we'll talk about the advantages of doing that, you should check, of course, that the country that you leave to has visa exempt status, so that you're able to travel on your BNO passport or your SAR passport visa exempt, and that you don't have to apply beforehand necessarily, because that in turn could delay things. So what's the advantage of applying at the border for leave outside of the rules rather than applying either from Hong Kong or visiting the UK and applying for leave outside of the rules? Well, if you apply for the visa from Hong Kong or in country from the UK, it could be subject to delays, and the guidance contemplates a position where an application has been lodged but not determined by the end of the year. And since we are entering a potential second wave of COVID, there are potential application delays. So there may be an advantage in that sense to applying at the border, because your application or request at the border needs to be determined immediately. The other point is, what is the downside? If you're not accepted for leave outside the rules, but you have a BNO or SAR passport, then they'd still have to consider admitting you as a visitor on your BNO passport. And so are you going to be in a position where you're sent back to wherever you have travelled from, or sent back to Hong Kong, let's say, if you've travelled from Hong Kong? Potentially unlikely, depending on the circumstances. Next point is, there are indications from the Chinese government that I've dealt with in my previous BNO videos that recognition of a BNO passport as a travel document may be withdrawn. So this could mean that if you only had a BNO passport, and many are in this position, then you would not be able to travel out of Hong Kong. So there may be an advantage to applying now rather than waiting until this issue becomes even more politically toxic than it is now. There are also indications of a potential Covert restriction that could be used to prevent you from entering an airport in Hong Kong without proof of COVID testing or government pre-approval. So this is basically the Chinese government proposal to extend the arrangements that, as I understand, apply in China into Hong Kong, where you'd be given a reference which would pre-approve you to enter certain public places. But that could be used potentially as an instrument to prevent people from leaving the country, especially in a sort of politically difficult situation, as the issue really comes to a head at the end of the year, and as the main BNO route kicks in January. Last point: if you come under leave outside of the rules as opposed to being a visitor, then you can work, and that's the main point and the main advantage. So I hope that's helpful. As I say, I am working with a Hong Kong advisor to assist Hong Kongers who are looking to settle in the UK, and would be delighted to help you. Just a quick disclaimer, this is for general information purposes. As I say, you should take legal advice. Very happy to assist you with that. And please note that the law is changing, as it has for the BNO route. Thanks so much for attending this live stream. Stay safe and bye for now.